And what happens with Rogan sometimes is he'll hear somebody that's on the dangerous end of the spectrum, and he'll just kind of soak it in.
And this is, I think this is a great point. And it's whoever job who thinks that information is dangerous, to fight to get their point of view out there, to counter what they think is misinformation. You can't just deputize people to say he should have known better and he should have prosecuted that point.
But the reality is, Jon, is that it might be my job or the New York Times job or even your job, but I don't have the audience that Joe Rogan does.
Then get it.
Yeah,
then find
get
people
it.
Who do, then go on that show.
Jon Stewart just did something no one saw coming. He defended conservatives, and now the liberal world is reacting hard. For years, many on the left haven't shown much empathy toward conservatives, often treating them like they don't even matter. But the moment Stewart stepped over that invisible line, it sent shockwaves through liberal circles. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. And honestly, I was just as surprised. There's a lot to break down here, so let's get into it.
You've been on Rogan a couple of times?
Yes.
What did you think of that experience, being on Joe Rogan?
I enjoyed being on Rogan. I think he's an interesting interviewer. There are right-wing, weaponized commentators whose sole purpose is to manipulate things to the benefit of the Bannon Project or the Project 2025. Rogan's not that guy.
What is that guy? How would you describe
that guy
him?
Is a curious comic who fell into this thing that got enormous, maybe doesn't has opinions all over the political spectrum, but has tendencies that people on the left does not fit the aesthetic.
Yep, you heard that right. Jon Stewart, long seen as a favorite on the left, just defended Joe Rogan, and it stirred up strong reactions in liberal circles. For years, Rogan has frustrated progressives, pointing out hypocrisy and questioning left-leaning politicians in ways most people avoid. Instead of taking a closer look at his criticism, many on the left chose to go after him, calling him dangerous, spreading questionable claims, and turning him into an easy political target. So when Stewart didn't join that pile on and instead defended Rogan's right to speak freely, it landed like a shockwave. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. One of their own didn't stick to the usual script. He went his own way.
He's a hunter.
I mean, in fairness, he's had people on who are kind of Nazi curious. That's not good.
I've interviewed Kissinger. And he was carpet bomb curious. I don't know what to say. It's very easy to castigate those where we're but he had an opinion a few years back that's, corrosive.
But the difference is when he was carpet bomb curious, you didn't say, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Here, it was pretty clear the interviewer was trying to bait Jon Stewart into throwing Joe Rogan under the bus. But Stewart didn't fall for it. Instead, he sidestepped the trap with the kind of ease you'd expect from a seasoned comedian who knows exactly how this game works. For years, many on the left have labeled Rogan as everything from problematic to far worse, using those tags against anyone who questions the mainstream liberal view. The question was meant to corner Stewart, to push him into repeating the same tired accusation. But Stewart saw right through it. He understands that a lot of Americans are getting tired of extreme labels being thrown around just to shut down debate. He also knows that when words are overused, they lose their impact, and calling everyone who disagrees evil only creates more division instead of real conversation.
And what happens with Rogan sometimes is he'll hear somebody that's on the dangerous end of the spectrum, and he'll just kind of soak it in.
I think this is a great point. And it's whoever job who thinks that information is dangerous, to fight to get their point of view out there, to counter what they think is misinformation. You can't just deputize people to say he should have known better and he should have prosecuted that point.
But the reality is, Jon, is that it might be my job or the New York Times job or even your job, but I don't have the audience that Joe Rogan does.
Then get it.
Yeah,
then find
get
people
it.
Then go on that show.
Once again, Jon Stewart refuses to take the bait and go after Joe Rogan. The interviewer, repeating familiar talking points, brought up the usual claim that Rogan spreads misinformation. It's a word that gets used a lot these days, often applied when something doesn't fit a certain narrative, but treated as truth when it does. Stewart saw that inconsistency right away. Instead of joining the crowd, He calmly pointed out how quickly different opinions get labeled as dangerous. In that moment, he reminded people that debate and disagreement aren't crimes, they're part of a healthy democracy. His decision not to condemn Rogan wasn't just restraint. It felt more like a quiet pushback against a culture that sometimes mixes control with truth.
Then do those things. Like it's not acceptable to just say, well, I don't like what he does. Then do it better, beat them at their own game. It's not enough to just complain that guy got a platform and don't platform that guy. There's no one in this world right now that isn't platformed. And my biggest frustration, honestly, with a lot of scientists is they all go, RFK, oh, he's so f***ed up, that's terrible information. Oh, okay, what's the information?
I really like the point Jon Stewart is making here. If people truly believe someone is spreading misinformation, then the best response is to challenge it with facts and evidence. That's how debate is supposed to work in a free society. But instead of engaging with opposing views, a lot of the time the reaction shifts toward shutting people out, silencing them, or trying to discredit the person instead of the argument. It's less about proving something wrong and more about pushing it off the stage entirely. Stewart's point gets to the core of today's public conversation. If your ideas are solid, they shouldn't need protection through censorship. They should be able to stand on their own. Yet more and more, the response leans toward removing voices instead of debating them. By calling for open discussion and transparency, Stewart highlights a real tension, where calls for tolerance and open-mindedness can sometimes clash with how disagreement is actually handled.
I've got people in my family that are to the right of Attila the Hun. And when people tell me, like, how can you platform that person on your show? I go, I platform my uncle every Thanksgiving. And by the way, I love him. He's a three-dimensional human being who has qualities that I really admire, things about him, and we've lost that. We've lost the ability to love people because we litmus test at every point.
Jon Stewart is calling out what he sees as a growing reluctance on the left to engage with people who think differently. Instead of real conversation, things can turn into cancellation. Instead of debate, it becomes quick dismissal. In his view, that kind of instant pushback toward opposing opinions is part of what's driving people further apart. He believes unity doesn't come from silence or censorship, but from honest, sometimes uncomfortable dialogue. If progress really matters, then people have to stop treating conservatives and centrists like enemies and start recognizing them as fellow Americans with different viewpoints. His message is simple, but it carries weight. Trust can't be rebuilt, and divisions don't heal if everyone is just talking over each other. It starts with listening, even when it's not easy. And coming from someone who spent years calling out both sides, that perspective feels earned. Still, as expected, not everyone on the left agreed with him, and some were quick to push back on his comments.
Jeremy Fassler says on X, quote, "We'd come so much closer to solving racism in America if white people realized the nice relatives they sit across from at Thanksgiving wouldn't be so nice to them if they weren't white." And writer Josh Olson says, quote, "The right wants to take basic human rights away from multiple members of my family and other people I love. No one who shares those views is welcome in my home or my family, ever. Jon Stewart is so wrong on this, it's jaw-dropping."
And that's exactly the concern Jon Stewart has been pointing to. In his view, parts of the political left have become so firm in their beliefs that they're less willing to seriously engage with opposing opinions. Debate, he suggests, is sometimes replaced with moral certainty, and disagreement can quickly get labeled as intolerance or hate. On issues like gender identity, supporters often frame policies around trans rights as a straightforward matter of human dignity and protection. At the same time, critics argue that there are real concerns and emotional tensions that also deserve space in the conversation. Stewart's broader point isn't about picking sides. It's about the need for consistency and empathy. If one group's rights and experiences matter, then the concerns of others involved in the same debate also have to be acknowledged. From his perspective, ignoring that complexity doesn't really lead to compassion. It can come across more like confidence without enough willingness to listen.
Joe Rogan is a comedian and actor and game show host who is curious and started doing this podcast where he platforms, even that word is getting to be so annoying. He interviews, has conversations with a wide variety of people from people on the right, the very far right, to people on the very far left, including Bernie Sanders. Who, if you know, this is the biggest, one of the biggest shows there is. The audience is massive. If Kamala Harris had availed herself of the opportunity to be on it and do a good job, it would have helped her. She lacked, I think, confidence that she would do a good job, so she didn't do it.
Joe Rogan has built a reputation for interviewing a wide range of guests who are willing to have open conversations. His podcast has featured scientists, politicians, comedians, and everyday people, and it's often described as a more informal, long-form platform rather than a tightly controlled media setting. One frequently discussed topic is his attempted interview with Kamala Harris, which ultimately never took place. According to reports at the time, there were scheduling and format concerns, and her team was cautious about the structure of a long, unscripted conversation. Rogan also indicated he was open to adjusting the discussion style to make her more comfortable, but the interview still didn't happen. Supporters of Rogan see his format as one that emphasizes spontaneity and authenticity over prepared talking points, while critics argue that different public figures simply choose platforms that best fit their communication strategy. In the end, the interview not happening became part of a broader debate about media access, control, and how political conversations are shaped today.
Not every single Rogan episode or interview takes the conversation in exactly a direction I would or I like, but that's fine. It's not exactly for me. It's for a wide swath of real Americans who have confusing views and views that are all over the place, that have right-wing views on social issues and left-wing views on economic issues, or vice versa. And for, David Remnick was like, "Oh, this is Nazi adjacent." Well, yeah, people have Nazi adjacent views out there, and you could no longer just ignore this kind of speaks to what I talked about in my radar. We no longer live in a world where there's a small number of TV channels and a small number of book publishers.
Joe Rogan's conversations and views are often a mix of perspectives, sometimes leaning left, sometimes right, and often somewhere in between. His show doesn't follow a predictable direction, which is a big part of its appeal. You never really know where a discussion will go next, and that's exactly why millions of people keep watching. Even when guests challenge his audience or push back against their expectations, they tend to stay engaged. Rogan's platform isn't built like an echo chamber. It's designed to bring in different viewpoints and let them collide. The idea isn't just to confirm what you already believe, but to put those beliefs under pressure and see how they hold up. In a media environment where many shows stick closely to one side, his podcast stands out as a space for open-ended discussion. It can be messy and unfiltered, but that's also what gives it its appeal. It feels more like a conversation than a lecture, and for many listeners, that kind of format is exactly what's missing elsewhere.
You can effectively keep views that you think are too extreme outside of that you can keep them out of being discussed. You just can't do that anymore. The internet has made that impossible. So the reality is you're going to have to live alongside with people who are spouting views you don't agree with and find out how to. And some of these views are very dangerous and should be argued against, but you have to actually do that work, do that labor. You can't just say, it's wrong to engage them, they're going to go away.
As Bill Maher often points out, the best response to bad speech is better speech. You don't stop ideas you disagree with by shutting them down. You challenge them, question them, and respond with facts and reason. That's a core part of how a healthy democracy is supposed to function. If people truly believe that misinformation is being spread, then the answer isn't to silence those voices or remove them from public platforms. The answer is to engage directly, debate openly, and make stronger arguments that can stand on their own. But too often, the instinct becomes avoidance instead of engagement, acting as if ignoring opposing views will make them disappear. In reality, it tends to do the opposite. It deepens division and erodes trust. Dialogue can be uncomfortable, but it's also essential for keeping a society open and intellectually honest. In that sense, Jon Stewart's defense of Joe Rogan isn't really about politics, it's about principle. It highlights the importance of free expression and open discussion as foundations of a healthy society. Agree or disagree with Rogan, the idea is that defending his right to speak also protects everyone else's right to be heard. And on that note, that's where we'll wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.